Well, welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin Q&A. I am your host Q, joined by the other host, the host who has not left you one time
Okay.
hanging,
The host that made it to our shows, all the shows
the
this
host
week.
who has a perfect attendance record thus far.
Yeah, the host that's carrying this show on his back. All right.
Also known as the other host, McShane. Although I guess we
Uh,
should start calling you Alex, so it makes more sense why this show is called Bitcoin Q&A.
oh yeah, that's a good point. I should change my name tag down here.
But other host, what do we have in store for our esteemed audience across all platforms today?
Whoa, give me 1 second. I'm getting noise from everywhere. Yeah, so we've got just a couple news stories today. Pretty low news day, but kind of exciting, I guess. Just a sign of the times, really. The Binance US CEO resigned, and they cut 1/3 of the staff. I didn't realize. I mean, we got to pull up some stats or something on how small Binance US really is, because they only had 300 employees, just over 300 employees, and they just cut just over 100 of them. And apparently it provided them with about 7 more years of runway. So 7 more years of financial operational runway. So I don't know if that's a good or bad trade. My question is, why did the CEO resign? I hadn't been keeping up with him. I wasn't even really aware of this guy, Brian Schroeder. He joined Binance, or took over Binance US in 2021. So kind of the height of the bull market. And I don't know. He's going to be replaced by the chief legal officer, Norman Reed.
They definitely didn't do anything illegal.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, what's about to come out? I don't want to fear monger or FUD, but Binance is a pretty fishy place to begin with. I mean, it's a massive exchange outside of the US, but I've never even used Binance US. Have you? I don't even know anyone that uses it as their main exchange, because they're
So I
not
don't
legally
I
allowed
don't
to
use it,
operate most of
but I
their.
will say right before I joined Bitcoin Magazine, I was interviewing with Binance USA and was like going down the line with them, and it was one of the companies I was picking between, but ended up at Bitcoin Magazine.
That's probably for the best, huh? I mean,
I
I don't
mean,
know. Might be might be
I would
well
have gotten laid off
capitalized.
either way. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, yeah. First to go either way. Uh, yeah. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, have you ever heard anything? There's a couple weeks ago, a lot of I guess you could call it FUD. Seems kind of unfounded about Binance spreading. It seems like every few months we like to get on a kind of take your Bitcoin off exchange tweet storm. Everyone does, and just say that CZ's got to be up to something, been involved in too much shady stuff, and they're going to have some of the same customer deposit reallocation and basically fraud issues that we saw with FTX and so many other companies throughout history. I don't know what your gut feel with that is, Q. I mean, do you access? Have you ever even used those services from a VPN or something? I've never
Like
even logged into Binance.
I so I think I literally have hang on. I have some old crypto things that I haven't logged into in years now. One moment, please.
Well, I'm not asking you to log in live. I mean, unless you want to show us your one wallet address.
No, so I literally have a Binance. I have the Binance US app. I didn't even realize it.
Oh, really?
I have
And you've
I
been
haven't used it in so long that it's like, you know how sometimes your iPhone will like delete apps, but it's sort of like memory is there, and if you press it, it will re-download the app.
Yeah, it's on the cloud.
Yeah, that like I would have to re-download Binance USA.
Well, you better do it to access all your crypto. I mean,
I feel like at this point it's probably worth less than $1, and I don't want to admit how much money I threw at like random shit.
are you holding a bunch of random crypto?
I've found like one of my wallets with like random crypto that I forgot existed, and it was like honestly depressing to see how little was left in there.
Yeah, you missed the cycle top with that. You're gonna have to hang on for a couple more years before you can
Well,
exit.
let's be perfectly honest. I bought at the cycle top.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
So I
yeah.
didn't miss
So
it.
yeah, we're basically the least qualified people to be giving you guys financial advice, but nonetheless, here we are. We're the first to Zap.stream. I think we're the first recurring show that's not like lo-fi music or someone just kind of like coding in a dark room on Zap.stream. So I highly encourage everybody to check that place out. I'm gonna pull it up right now and see if we've got anyone joining. Yesterday we had a nice inflow of comments and viewers and zaps from there. The beauty of Zap.stream is it operates over the NOSTR protocol. NOSTR is free and open source. You can stream sats to people and kind of leave comments that pop out in the chat. And I think it's a really well designed interface. And it's amazing for just how few months people have been paying attention to NOSTR that these products and services were popped up. So yeah, shout out as usual to everyone on Zap.stream. So what's new? What's new with you, Q? What's going on in your life?
Uh, I moved out of my mom's basement, but we're gonna keep that bit going for a little bit longer, probably. So if you
Is this
watch this
the
episode, you know.
is this the first time you've lived on your own?
No,
Oh, okay. Oh, you went to college, right?
I went to college, but I also moved out at one point in my 20s to live in like LA proper.
Are you in your 30s?
I'm old.
Wow. Congrats.
I will
Yep.
say
Go
I've
ahead.
I've been lying for like 4 years to people saying that I'm 30. So when I turned 30, I kind of was like, huh, all right, I guess this is irrelevant because I've just been lying and saying I'm 30.
There you go. I guess I'll have to take up that strategy soon. Well, outside of this, the only real news is kind of cultural today. I mean, we've got Nick Carter running around saying Bitcoin has failed as a medium of exchange. This one's curious to me. He pulled up basically a random chart that shows I guess you'd call it a greater market share of exchange happening on stable coins than Bitcoin. Like, I think it was greater transaction volume or something. I don't know. What do you think of this, Q? Has Bitcoin failed as a medium of exchange?
Uh, yeah, and it also died, and it failed, and it's never gonna work. And it's always really fun to take the early victory laps, but ultimately, like his argument's not wrong, but his time span is wrong. And if you only want to look at Bitcoin in this microcosm of like what has existed in the what, let's say 14 years that it's realistically been circulating, sure, as a
Well,
medium of
I,
as
th-
a
I think his I think his argument's actually wrong because I mean, compare stable coins to the US dollar. Okay, so now have stable coins failed as a medium of exchange just because something might be used? I don't even agree necessarily with a metric that he's using to describe the medium of exchange. And like you, I don't agree with the time frame. I think it's too soon to call it quits for that. I mean, we've only had
totally,
Lightning a couple of years here. Um,
totally. I'm more in the camp of like I just don't care what he has to say about a lot of things. I used to, and then he gave me a little like dinty handshake once, and I was like, "Oh, so you're a woman? Okay, got it." Sorry if
so you
that's
don't like
offensive.
what you don't listen to women? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't listen to men with dainty handshakes.
Damn, you must have left California. This is a pretty based Q coming out. This is high test Q coming out here. All
But like,
right.
let's be realistic, man. Like, I don't want to say too much, but like I myself, because I have a lot of KYC Bitcoin, I unfortunately when I am presented with opportunities to spend Bitcoin, I sit there and I'm like, no, because then I'm going to have to pay taxes on this. So I will like purchase Bitcoin on the spot to then immediately spend it.
I'll say I think where Nick is correct is that we haven't delivered on a lot of the promises of Bitcoin, and we do use a lot of cultural narratives to cope. And you'll see those narratives get blown to insane proportions in the bull market. Um, Even store of value as a narrative is like, yeah, cool store of value, bro. I'm down 80%. Like, I, you know what I mean? My wealth has been decimated over the last 2 years. Really, really good store of value. No, think longer, think on a longer time span. It's just like this back and forth. I think he nailed the timing on this because there is a larger conversation happening. I don't know who instigated it. Um, but there are certainly other. I think it might have been John Carvalho yesterday morning or maybe the day before, talking about how basically we failed to convince merchants to adopt Bitcoin, and we failed to use it, basically to convince the world to use it for transactions. And the only narrative that really has kind of survived in perpetuity is this hodl till you die, hodl, hodl, hodl mindset, which I mean worked great for early adopters. If you want to call us early adopters, I mean, it depends when you came in, I guess. But this whole class of the last 3 years it's like just hilarious to watch them chant this hodl, hodl, hodl kind of mindset when they're all down so bad, dude, like so bad. And I think the narrative that could have been more productive, like this is where I would actually agree with Carter and I think Carvalho. I don't remember who else was talking about it, but it's always better to spend or replace and to transact with Bitcoin and show people how Bitcoin works by virtue of using it. Because if you're not using it, you're not engaging the world in any meaningful way with your Bitcoin, with your purchasing power. I mean, it's not going to spread adoption to just kind of hodl and cheer for it and just cast people out. I just think the current kind of like culture of maximalism is really super intellectually lazy and also like actively as like activists and proponents of Bitcoin, incredibly basically lazy and not really headed down the right path. Um
Well, hang on. I'm going to say something that's going to piss people off, but like, would
sure.
you say it's the broader maxi community, or would you say it's the younger generation of Bitcoiners?
Mm, I don't know anyone that was in Bitcoin pre 2020 that even wants to like associate with these people. Like they're so frustratingly
Well, that's what I'm
stuck
saying.
in
I don't,
these virtue signally like value judgment games.
dude.
Um, I
I
mean we
gotta
can bring
say, I've
we
gone
should,
on this rant a few times, but like
uh-huh.
the maxis who sit there and mock like PC culture, cancel culture, and clown world, are they themselves like turning into and perpetuating these same things that they mock in broader society that they don't like? Then they bring it back here and they're like, oh, you don't believe in Bitcoin the way I believe in it, so you like I'm not going to listen to your opinion on it. Instead of having like thoughtful intellectual debates and discussions, we just we've created cancel culture within the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Well, I mean part of this is just it's testament to Bitcoin's growth a little bit. So in that 2020 2021 run up, it's like market cap grew a lot. We got a lot of new entrants into the market. You know, they want to pretend they've kind of been around the block here. They've never been through these bear markets before. They've never watched their wealth kind of dissipate overnight. Walk out of a restaurant and see that you're you're worth half as much as you were before you walked in. They haven't been through the pain. They don't have historical context. I mean, a lot of them, yeah, are reading and participate in the community in really really good ways. But I think I think generally, like you said, Q, it's just like there's just a lot of these toxic kind of behaviors that we've picked up. People who want to just be an asshole and pretend that they're part of some kind of herd immune system. Um, I mean, the immune system idea has been around for a while. Like, there's a guy you can go read the first kind of posts about this on the Bitcoin Talk forums. Like, this is not a new idea at all. But when you start attacking your own, it gets a little bit questionable. And I'm not jaded. I don't hate them. I still consider myself a maximalist. I mean, I'm not promoting anyone go mess with other altcoins or cryptocurrencies. Like, I do have this kind of like strongly held belief that Bitcoin is the answer here to a lot of our financial problems and society problems, and generally fix the money, fix the world. I think is generally correct, and I think you should actually push people to steer clear of these other scams and to kind of awaken people from this grand fiat delusion that they're living in, which includes, by the way, the all the other cryptocurrencies. I think that is just a perpetuation of fiat, like into this kind of blockchain world. That is just the same perpetrators, the same basically Wall Street, crooks and cronies coming over here and scamming. It also applies to a lot of these kind of NFTs projects, a lot of these like BRC20 tokens, ordinal inscription projects. However, there's like a balance here. I'm also not going to tell people how to use their money and how to use the tools, the free and open source software that's been allotted to us. I mean, I think it's better to warn people and educate people and make people aware. Like, that is the function of the immune system, and to even attack outright scams that aren't being, maybe that haven't been unveiled. So, like, for example, all of the screaming everyone did about Luna, like before the crash, and FTX, Dylan LeClaire making it known, like, there's a hole in their balance sheet. Like, something's going on here. Something's going on between Binance and FTX, and this whole house of cards is going to come tumbling down. You need to get your money out of there, get your money off exchanges. Like, these are very healthy critiques and attacks. But what I see more of is kind of like this trolling online behavior, which not in and of itself bad, not really very meaningful or harmful at all, but it just seems like a waste of so much energy that we have trapped in the system and all these new people. It just seems super unproductive. It's like a lot of criticism and very little building. I mean, some of the loudest voices in that space don't even work in the industry. They haven't contributed anything. So that gets tough. And part of that is just growing pains. I guess like the last point on that I wanted to make is, in the end, it's ultimately good. It means we're not kind of this niche interest group. Like, we've actually grown so much that Bitcoin has become a bit less of an echo chamber, and you start to attract all types of personalities, um, including assholes. So there's just there's good and the bad with it. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't even advocate people don't like become Bitcoin maxis or maximalism. I just think, as I've said time and time again on this show, I just think the value games are not useful. Like, I'm better than you, or you are worse than me for XYZ reason, just isn't a useful worldview for anyone. Um, the more useful thing, I think, is free market collaboration. Like, what can we build together? How can I lift you up? Um, just kind of these less self-interested stances that can really actually contribute to the growth of the network. Uh, I think that's my end of my rant on the current state of maxi culture.
Would you want to answer the question of like what does fix the money, fix the world mean? Because I think that that's a statement that we say a lot, but we don't necessarily define it too often.
Yeah, I can define it. um, so the problem with money now is it's not money. Fiat money, it's not neutral. It's not a neutral tool. It's like this biased, one-sided um, state wielded weapon that is used to make people poor and is used to debase them and to give them just enough runway to kind of stay alive, but also it's really built to cloud their judgment of the future. Like if you can't save into the future, you can't plan for it. You can't think realistically about it. You don't have the means to. I mean, it's hard to plan for tomorrow if you don't have enough money to get through the day today and to find a meal. And that's really the case. What are the horrific stats we hear over and over about how many Americans don't have $1,000 in the case of emergency? And so, like, through personal experience, which is like much less interesting than the broad experience that I think people have had together in Bitcoin. But I mean, I think many of us have experienced that the minute we started saving in Bitcoin and the minute we started, we started using it for transactions and maybe a few, purchases here and there, we realized like, wait, this is a neutral tool that can't be censored by the government. I don't have to ask permission from my bank. I don't have to call between the hours of 9 and 5, to get help with this thing. It's just 24/7 neutral commodity. Okay, well, that's going to incentivize me to work a lot harder because I can use it how I want under my own terms. I'm not going to get debased by the will of a few. So when we talk about fix the money, fix the world, we're really fixing the incentive structure, um, and returning to something closer than a fiat market rather than, sorry, a fiat market, a free market, returning to something like a free market, like was had on, gold standard and various other commodity standards, but it's actually better, um, for a lot of reasons. The Bitcoin doesn't have to physically be and can't be physically anywhere. So you can transport it virtually. It really is quite like magic. I was playing around with kind of a brain wallet yesterday, just rather than writing down, 12, 24 words, I was just memorizing them and regenerating them on a different device and on different wallets. And it was, dude, it's super crazy how that works to me. Like it's like magic. So um, I didn't have to ask permission for any of it. I mean, try that with your bank account. Try to sweep the whole balance of your bank account to another bank and do that in less than, a minute. You can't. You can't. There's so much permission involved and forget about it if you have any significant savings. Um, okay, so the other side of this, I think, is it's also returning personal responsibility to the world in a time when we really fucking need it, dude. Like I just talked about with, maybe a little bit of the misguided kind of sector of Bitcoin maximalism. Like we live in a soft world. I'm like totally subscribed to this fourth turning theory. These weak men have made really hard times, and women. I mean, just weak people. Like it's just a soft society where we want to look to the government for answers, institutions kind of to take care of us, take the pain away, give us just a little bit more of a stimulus check. And part of all that is due to like this psychological poisoning that's occurred because of high time preference thinking, which has actually been handed down to us by the government. They say, you know what? We're going to wipe out the middle class and you're going to become the ones who live hand to mouth. And you're going to live hand to mouth until the end of time. And with Bitcoin, that doesn't have to be the case. I've experienced it in my life, millions of other people have experienced it too. It's like the moment I started saving a Bitcoin, you look back a few years later and your wealth's appreciated hundreds of thousands of times. It's like, what do you know, you, it, it's liberating, and it's the separation of money and state. And by the separation of money and state, it's not going to fix every problem in the world, right? Um, but it is going to fix a lot of the incentives in society and the relationship and the balance of power between individuals and the coercive state, that's stealing from them to fund foreign regime change wars that last forever. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, they can't take your Bitcoin to fund those wars. Okay, so now they have to find another means. They can still tax you and coerce you into taxation, but they can't debase you. They can't debase my Bitcoin. They have to put in the proof of work, just like everyone else, to either mine it or buy it or acquire some. So it just completely levels the playing field. Um, I think through Bitcoin, we're actually going to see a return of the middle class, and we're going to see true economic prosperity and opportunity. I mean, this is the dream of America, and this is like the dream of every person. It's like the option, even the possibility to kind of manifest a destiny that includes a little bit of a financial ladder that you can climb up. And if in the fiat system that's not even there, you're running on a treadmill that's like outpacing you, like debasing you 10% a year. So it's a pretty long-winded rant, man, but I'm pretty serious about this stuff. I think Bitcoin really can fix the world. What do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say I was hoping for like a succinct little answer there, but that you
Sorry.
covered a lot of bases. I'm gonna make mine a little shorter, a little sweeter, but there are a lot of issues within our society right now that the way we've created money has been a root cause of why these systems are failing, especially now. These systems have been able to, we've been lied to when we create these new systems like a new government agency under the guise of, oh, this is for national security or this is for protection or this is the right thing to do. But then we misalign these incentives because we create money out of thin air. And so these misaligned incentives have led to so much overreach and so many bad actors that ultimately you need to fix the root issue. It goes back to treating, like in medicine, you either treat the symptoms or you treat the underlying issue. And for too long, we've just been treating the symptoms. But the underlying issue in our society is that we have very easy money to create, and then we have bad incentives that go along with that. So fixing the money is fixing this root issue, and then we would hopefully be able to fix the incentives as a result.
Nice, nice. Oh, hey Tina, real quick, just a shout out. I just got a message on Zap.stream that our streaming balance is low. Somehow I might have to top that up real quick. Don't want to go unlived on Zap.stream. Um yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of one of the broader themes of the show. So I'm not too worried about covering this question all at once today because I think it's an exercise in low time preference. I think thinking of the world in this way is also probably the greatest. It's probably the best. It's not really an innovation. It's not really new, but it is a refreshing way to think that's been around for a while. That it's like a mental model that people haven't had in our culture again because they haven't been able to because they can't have a low time preference because they don't have any savings. But it's a huge contribution that Safedin made a few years ago. Probably the most important one. I mean, it's the thing you hear every day. It's become mimetic. It's a mimetic idea, this idea of you can live a high time preference lifestyle, or you can live kind of a low time preference, or at any given time you're taking actions that have opportunity costs that either contribute or take away from your kind of low time preference wealth and health accumulation, and it applies to all areas of life. So that's kind of a really nice takeaway. What do we got next? What are the next question for the day?
Next question for the day is what, oh no, what are Satoshi in the Bitcoin world and why are they significant? Or what is a Satoshi?
There's no such thing as a Satoshi. Um, so Satoshi is kind of Satoshis are mental models that we apply kind of on top of Bitcoin to help parse it better because the human brain isn't great with large numbers. So there's basically 100 million Satoshis to a Bitcoin. it's pretty arbitrary. That's just the way we choose to parse it, I guess. I think there's a lot of interesting arguments that are coming out nowadays. I think we covered this on an earlier show too. Um, or excuse me, there are no Bitcoin only Satoshis, you could say, but Satoshis themselves as a unit, like that word, is not that's not native to Bitcoin. I mean, that's not it may be native to Bitcoin, but that's not in the protocol. You could call them whatever you want. There's been a lot of argument and push forward to call them bits. A really funny argument I heard lately is like if sats are the standard, why do we call them anything? You don't have 7 stats. Yeah, you just have like 7. Like send me 4,200. You know what I mean? You don't even have to call them anything. So I think
You're
that's
only proving my point that there is nothing going on in the bear market, but that's the discussion we're having.
I love it.
Um,
Get rid of all the symbols, all these stupid fucking symbols that people keep drawing for sats. I'm sick of them. Um, I like. I mean, I'll say this again. I know that I said this on a previous show, but it's like there's 2 types of linguists, and most people apparently don't know this, but there are prescriptivists and descriptivists. And prescriptivist is like the most fascist form of linguists. That's like the French council gathering to tell society every year what words are okay to use, what words are officially French, and what words are not French. These are foreign bastardizations of our language. We're not going to use these words. That's totally like prescriptivism is a totally top down method of honestly, it's a method of control. It's a method of propaganda. Like, I think it's fucking hilarious and ironic to listen to, Beauty on and others rage on about what we're going to call Bitcoin and what words we're going to use. I appreciate how particular they are about language, but I don't think they realize the grand irony of telling people how to use language. It's very clear to me that, I mean, the reality is kind of a balance of both prescriptivism and descriptivism. But I would think most Bitcoiners fall on the descriptivist side, which is we use language as it naturally occurs. And if your message received is something similar to the message that I sent, that's good. That's language that counts, And what's naturally arisen over time is we call fractions of a Bitcoin Satoshis. And until further notice, we're probably going to continue to do that. That doesn't mean I don't think descriptivism can win. I think the standard could easily change. It's honestly just a matter of a couple of the big companies. If you could convince them to switch their standards, people would naturally start to change. I mean, it's a good example of this is rebranding of Twitter to X. I still
it's still
call it
Twitter.
both. Yeah, I still call it Twitter, but I call it X a lot too. Like it's getting in there. It doesn't take long for these habits to change, really. And if you have a compelling, I guess, reason or source for the change, it can become mimetic in a community over time. The Bitcoin community is quite small, so I could see bits changing to sats changing to bits. I could see it changing to something else. I generally do agree with the argument that bits are more intuitive for an audience and they'll promote onboarding, and it is healthy for us to kind of get out and shirk this cult of Satoshi thing. Bitcoin has no masters. It's not helpful to us. Satoshi's original visions for Bitcoin were nothing like the Bitcoin we have today. This totally captured centralized use cases and trusted custodians, but regardless, I think it's interesting to see what happens. I'm pretty neutral. I think it's also a discussion for people that just have less than 1 Bitcoin and just want to feel important. I think whole coiners don't give a fuck what you want to call it, but yeah, for the sake of onboarding, I would be down with bits. But the fact is that is not what I've never in my life heard somebody call Bitcoin fractions of a Bitcoin bits in like a real life conversation. Like nobody uses that.
No.
Yeah, so it's not going to, at least right now, that's not, bits are never going to happen. Stop trying to make bits happen.
I think I get what you're trying to say, and it intuitively makes sense. I do think though fundamentally, like we need a reference point for these smaller denominations, because Like even right now, very rarely are people transacting one Bitcoin at a time or any denomination within a ballpark of that. It tends to be much smaller denominations. If you're trying to use it on a day to day basis, it's going to be a lot easier to say, I'll send you 100 sats, which right now is
Nothing. No, the standard is nothing. We don't call them anything. Bitcoin is the standard, so we don't need a name for it.
so you would rather say point zero zero zero
No, no,
zero
no.
zero
In that argument,
zero one.
you get rid of the points, you get rid of the decimals, you get rid of the dot. Which, by the way, to make things more confusing, in Europe they don't use the dot; they use the comma. It's
Oh
reversed.
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
The
So
European numerical system has cost me a lot of money. A lot of money.
yeah, so sats or bits, I don't know. Let's see what happens over time, I guess. I'll happily adopt whatever people are calling it, but I don't see there's not a one person. There's maybe 10 people in the world going out and calling sats bits and confusing people.
Yeah. The other side of what you said though that's so valid is like the cult of Satoshi. And I'm in the camp very much that's like there's a little too much cultiness that goes on from time to time, and that can probably we could stand to lose a little bit of that.
I don't mind a good cult. Listen, I'm all for a good cult. The problem is Bitcoin doesn't have an active leader. So it's by definition, this is not a cult.
Which is, in
There's
my
no
opinion, more dangerous.
yeah. I mean, unless it's more like a religion. I mean, if you want to call that's like calling Christianity a cult. Like who is the live and
It
well
is.
leader?
It is a cult. Most
No, it's
religions
not.
are just most religions are just normalized cults. It's just most of their
Okay, but
cult
they have
leaders,
micro leaders like the local
right?
pastor or
The
whatever. Okay.
original founder of the cult is just no longer there. Like the
Yeah,
followers of
okay.
Jesus Christ follow Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that was a cult. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I don't think you see
And
too
there are
much of
still
that
people who
anymore.
follow those lessons.
No, but it's more of an institution, like the institution of Christianity. It's bigger than all that now.
So
Bitcoin's
for
not
the
quite
four
there yet.
people across all of our channels that are still watching, remember the
No,
part of the beginning of the
Q, we
show?
have 40 people on Zap.stream. You don't understand, dude.
All
We
right,
are the biggest
all right,
fucking show to ever come to Bitcoin.
all right. Specifically talking to the Zap.stream people, throw it in the chat. Like, tell me that what Alex is saying doesn't sound exactly like the way we were describing maximalism to start the episode, where you are losing the incentives, you are losing direction, and now all of a sudden it's like we're making excuses and we're justifying it because like we've normalized it. It's just become
Hold on, what are you
acceptable
talking
to,
about? I totally lost the
I'm
subject
talking
there.
about the cult of religion.
The cult of religion. I don't know. I just don't think. I think cults are smaller with leaders. I think that's part of the definition. I pull it up. What's the definition of a cult? I think Bitcoin can feel cultish at times. It can look like it from the outset, but people don't understand. We don't have a leader. There's no one making
A system
centralized
of
calls.
okay, cult definition noun. A
This
system of
better be fucking Oxford English Dictionary. If it's anything less, I'll
it's
cast you
from
off the show.
Oxford languages. A
What is
system
that?
of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. So, not
Object.
only
Okay,
does
that's
that
an interesting.
definition validate that the Bitcoin community is showing signs of being a cult, that also validates that all religion is in a from a first principles viewpoint a cult at its base level. A misplaced or excessive admiration of a particular person or thing, a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. Dude, I think it's fucking sinister to force people to show up somewhere at a certain time, a certain day of the week, every week.
You're a voluntary host of this show, bro. I don't make you barely make it every day. Q shows up 1 minute before we go live. Like, what are we talking about today? Yeah.
I wasn't even
All right.
talking about us, but you liked that. You liked
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. All right. What other questions do we have for the day? I guess,
Well, we,
yeah,
we
I
kind of
guess I
delved
lose
into
on the
this a
cold
little
front.
bit.
Mhm.
I want to give my answer to this of sats or bits. Um, I like I I don't like change, but I understand change is necessary. I had a very long conversation with Beauty on where he was explaining his sort of rationale of sats versus bits to me, and from the angle of simpler adoption on a mass scale, bits does intuitively make the most sense. And from the aspect of like, we need to kind of stop being this like cultish follower of Satoshi. Again, bits make sense. To your point though, like I think it's the infighting of it is irrelevant, and I don't see why you could theoretically have both operate and allow the one that becomes more normalized over time to just be the one that people use day to day while the others just sort of fades out of existence.
Yeah, we need basically that meme of the two girls fighting, and then the dude's off in the corner just smoking a bong. That's like sats and bits fighting it out. The guy with the bong is a whole coiner. Like, I don't care about this argument. I don't, you know what I mean? We're
I
gonna we're
thought you
gonna
were
get
going to do
there.
the girls screaming at the cat at the dinner table.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's applicable as well. All right. Another news story of the day I want to get into, just so we don't let the time go by, is that the Nostrasia conference, we've just crossed 900 signups. So that's epic. Um, we went from just a small kind of group of volunteers putting together a conference in the heart of the Costa Rican jungle, under the Jack Jack paid for the conference. Jack Dorsey paid for the conference and food for everyone to come out. So it's a free event. It was an unconference, totally just volunteers putting this thing together. And we had about 300 people come out there to the jungle, and now we've tripled that, and it's going to be even greater by the time the conference rolls around, because we're in the biggest city in the world. I mean, we're in Tokyo. Um, it's a free event. We want to pull people off the street in a safe way. But to sign up, yeah, we want people to come. Like, the minimum barrier entry is like having an interest in Nostr, and it is to have a Nostr account. But if you show up with a friend that's not on Nostr yet, we're gonna sign them up at the door, and they're gonna have a great educational experience and a fun time. So just to give a little bit, show this event a little bit, it's November 1st through 3rd. We've got a wicked menu. We've got a wicked lineup of speakers and workshops, devs, power users, people giving presentations, creatives, designers, all kinds of fun stuff's happening. We've got a welcome party that's going to be just, we're gonna have a good time. That'll be like November 1st, the evening, and then we've got the next 3 days to just dive deep in Nostr, build together. But it's mostly about, I think it's about just the networking and the camaraderie. There are a lot of businesses and open source projects created at Nostrica. Um, and I think it's going to be even more so at Nostrasia. So this event will occur virtually. We're streaming it out. So if you can't join us in person, go to nostr.world and sign up. There's no personal data collected. It's just a bunch of voluntary questions so we can learn more about the audience and try to provide you with the content you want to see and the experience that you want to get out of this. It's basically a people's unconference. So go to nostr.world, NOSTR.world, and register. If you can join us in person, we're kind of coming down to the wire here. It's November 1st through 3rd, but I know some super fans of Nostr are going to make the trip. Join us in Tokyo or Hong Kong on those dates. So we have events on the ground in person at both those places. The Tokyo event has a capacity of about, I think it's like 1,300 people. So it's much larger, about 4 or 5 times larger than the NOSTR event in the Costa Rican jungle, and it's in the heart of Tokyo. It's in basically the busiest, most populated district, so it's going to be bustling. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun after the event too, exploring together and biking around the city and doing all sorts of things. The Hong Kong event's much smaller. It's about, I think our capacity is about 130 people, and the goal for that is to make it easier for mainland Chinese to come because they're not allowed to use Nostr. It's banned. So if they can show up in Hong Kong for a day, we can provide them the tools to help liberate them and a little bit and get them on this distributed social media network. Actually, that's incorrect. It's not really a social media network. This distributed protocol that can be used for, I mean, there are basically no limits, whatever your imagination can build on it. It's just a communications protocol. Notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. So we're pretty excited about that. I'm going to be there, speaking, organizing the whole thing with a group of really awesome diehard volunteers. Tino, our producer, is going to be there working on the video side of things. Not sure if Q is going to be there, but we'll try to get him there. I'd like him to be there. And yeah, 900 other people so far signed up. So sign up today, nostr.world, and join us. This is going to be the conference of the year. I can tell you that every single person told me that Nostrico was like their favorite conference. This Costa Rican, we were just surfing, hanging out on a hippie commune, talking about Nostr all day, getting to know each other. A lot of Bitcoin talk too. If you're new to Nostr, or if you're watching from YouTube or Rumble or something, the Nostr community is basically bootstrapped by the Bitcoin community. I mean, there are certainly users on there that are not Bitcoiners, but a lot of the conversations, a lot of the users are Bitcoiners. There's a strong overlap. There's a really fun kind of proof of work way to interact with each other through Zaps and through Bitcoin. So while the protocols are different, they're both free and open source, and they have a bunch of kind of beautiful and unique ways to complement each other and kind of grow together. So, if you're a Bitcoiner, I can assure you, if you don't know anything about Nostr and you happen to be in Tokyo, stop by. You'll have a hell of a time at this conference, and you'll learn so much, and you'll make so many friends. Yeah, that's my show for Nostrasia for today.
Low key want to go, but there's a 0% chance I'm gonna be able to make it. But I could stand to learn how to use Nostr.
Definitely. We all could. Carnage asked a good question. Carnage asked a good question in the chat. What about the dollar worshippers? We got to go back to our old conversation because we it's so nice to finally have a viewership on this
thing. I see. Okay, the dollar worshippers.
Yeah, I think this is I think this is a valid question. Yeah, I think this is the cult of the petrodollar is absolutely a real thing, but I think that's actually more of a cult of the United States, like government and the war system. Like it is definitely the war machine. It's that's the number one use case for these dollars is basically money laundering, the expansion of powers that never get reduced, and the perpetuation of these segments of government that are utterly useless. They can't complete a task if their life depended on it. They employ thousands of people and they'll never be shut down as long as they can keep the money printer running, and they can keep outsourcing that monetary debasement to wipe out the middle class, the poor people of America. But first, foreign, I guess you would call them friends of the United States. They're the ones who feel it first. People that are using dollar systems outside of the United States. I mean, they're impacted by this first.
Well, I would, to your point, say that the dollar worshippers are really just the central planners who've benefited from the dollar system. And then the second,
Are not all the people that are hyper resistant to Bitcoin, like the Jamie Dimons of the world? I mean, and then
Benefited from the dollar
individuals.
system. Warren Buffett
Right, right,
benefited from the dollar system. These are people who have
right.
figured out the game of the fiat system. And so for them to have to learn the rules of a new game is too much for them to wrap their minds around. So they would rather force the system to stay the way it is rather than see the game they've won change. That to me is
Yeah,
the
it's incentives for them if they've
total.
already won. But there are people so stuck in this mind frame, like they've spent their whole life in this worldview of the dollar, they can't imagine anything outside of it, that they're going to continue to work to accrue dollars until they die, even though we have a better alternative, because they're very resistant to the idea. You have to embrace Bitcoin at all. You have to first admit that you were wrong about a lot of things. You have to be open-minded. If you're not open-minded, it's not going to work, because your whole understanding of the financial system and what dollars are is wrong. And if you can't embrace that, you're not going to be open to an alternative because you don't see a problem. So you're not going to understand that there's a solution. It's going to be a totally foreign um, idea to you. So I think there are millions of people that are stuck in their local fiat regimes and would like nothing more to accumulate as much fiat as possible. And I would go as far as to say that it perpetuates even within the Bitcoin community. There's a lot of software that we use that, for whatever reason, shows dollar conversions. Because guess what? All of us still use fiat. All of us. The hardest of the hardcore, the Matt Odells of the world, are still buying their plane tickets with fucking fiat. Like, it's a useful thing that actually works for them. I'm sorry to say it, but in some ways it's more convenient than Bitcoin, and we have to up our competition to uh outperform the dollar in many ways and make it a easier experience, so that it's not so cumbersome to make this case like, oh, use Bitcoin, spin up this
Yeah, I
wallet,
mean,
manage these addresses. Go
the
ahead.
the argument I get a lot is, you know, why do we need new money? Like the dollar works, and it it is such an uphill conversation when people sort of dig their heels in the ground and have this belief that, well, the dollar works for me, why doesn't it work for everyone else? With this failed understanding of their worldview is stuck in America, in the country that creates and generates the dollar. So we also naturally benefit from this money printing, and it looks as though it can just go on forever.
Yeah. um
That's
Yeah, I guess in other, yeah, I don't know. I agree. There's definitely a cult of kind of veneration for these objects of dollars. And it's sad to see. I think the way to help transition out of it is to change your unit of account to Bitcoin mentally. It doesn't really take that long if you start using it and only paying attention to that number, and setting goals to accumulate and paying attention, and you know balancing your Bitcoin kind of budget in Bitcoin terms, is it goes a long way.
Absolutely. And Carnage, to your point, like there's definitely a subset of the population of the world that does feel that way, that is seeing the things break, doesn't really understand how Bitcoin would fit into that equation. But I'd also challenge that notion. And I'd be willing to bet that there is also still a subset of the population, specifically in America, and even most likely in broader Europe, more developed nations in general, that would sit there and say, I don't need this internet money. I'd rather have something tangible in my hands. And so for them, there is still this there is a there is still a large gap as far as understanding of what Bitcoin can actually do versus the problems that we are facing and how these two are actually linked. And that's the point of these types of conversations.
Yeah, I think
Now,
for those
only
people who would rather have a bearer instrument, give them a Sats card. Give them an open dime. I usually give them a Sats card, and that's gonna hold their attention for a while. It's pretty interesting little device, and it's fun. If you put a little bit of Bitcoin in there, they're incentivized to hold it and learn a little bit more about it. So one good
Fair.
method of onboarding.
Well, we've crossed over 31 questions answered so far on our quest to 21 million.
All right, man, we're getting close.
We're chugging along. So one question at a time, 3 questions a day, at least.
What do we want to dive into one more today, or should we wrap things up here?
I want to wrap things up because we did 4, and I feel like this last question deserves more time than just the last 4 minutes of the stream.
Yeah, I agree with you. So tune in tomorrow to find out our mystery question.
Oh, and feel free to DM us, leave a comment, review, or whatever with your questions, and we will answer them.
Yeah, and please
Shout out
don't
Carnage
forget
for the
to
question today.
yeah. Shout out everyone who tuned in on Zap.stream. Super helpful and great to see. And we love talking with you guys every morning. We'll be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're over on Rumble or YouTube. Share the stream with your friends if you enjoyed it or if you hated it. Feel free to argue with us in the chat or DM us. We love to
Specifically, DM Alex if you hate it, though.
Yeah,
I'll just ignore
Q
you.
can't take it. Q's barely hanging in as he's fragile. So
Dude, one negative comment on I'm out.
he's out. Yeah,
Don't bully
one
me.
negative comment and his pixelated version of Q might just implode. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern.